The massive ships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like floating cities made of crystal and light. They were so large that Earth's satellites had to recalibrate their sensors just to measure them properly. The ships didn't announce themselves with weapons or threats. Instead, they simply waited, hanging in space like patient giants. Ambassador Cathara's voice came through every radio, television, phone, and computer on Earth at exactly the same moment. The alien's holographic form appeared in living rooms, offices, and government buildings around the world. It spoke in perfect, melodious tones that somehow translated flawlessly into every human language, as if the words were being placed directly into each listener's mind. "People of Earth," the alien said, its tall, graceful form shimmering with an inner light. "We are the Galactic Confederation, and we extend our arms to welcome you into the greatest civilization the galaxy has ever known." Korean President Lee Jae-woo sat in the packed assembly hall of the United Nations, watching his fellow world leaders lean forward with barely contained excitement. The emergency session had been called within hours of the aliens' arrival, and representatives from every nation had scrambled to attend. The aliens' offer was intoxicating. It's almost too good to believe. Cathara gestured with arms that seemed to flow like water, and holographic displays filled the air above the assembly. Images of gleaming cities that floated among the stars, medical devices that could heal any injury, and ships that could travel between worlds in days rather than years. "We offer you unlimited clean energy," the ambassador continued. "Medical technology that could eliminate death from aging, and access to trade routes spanning thousands of worlds. Your children could live forever, exploring wonders beyond your imagination." The displays showed humans working alongside dozens of alien species, all living in harmony. There were no wars, no poverty, no suffering. It was paradise made real. "Your species has shown remarkable resilience," Cathara said, its voice carrying what sounded like genuine admiration. "You have survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that would have destroyed lesser civilizations. But you fight among yourselves. When you could be exploring the stars, join us and know peace eternal." The catch came wrapped in diplomatic language, presented so smoothly that many missed its significance. Earth would need to dissolve its national governments and accept Confederation law. All military forces would be disbanded. Human society would be restructured according to Confederation principles. It was presented as evolution, not conquest. "This is not subjugation," the alien assured the assembly. "It's graduation. You will join 47 other species who have transcended their primitive origins to become part of something greater." Most world leaders were already nodding in agreement. The American president whispered excitedly to his advisors about the end of the energy crisis. Chinese premier calculated the economic benefits of interstellar trade. The European Union representative was already drafting integration proposals, but in the Korean delegation, General Park Min-ho noticed something others missed. The alien never mentioned what happened to other species cultures after they joined. The holographic displays showed harmony and prosperity. But where were the diverse traditions and customs that should have existed among 47 different species? Everyone in the images seemed to dress the same, act the same, even move the same way. Park had spent 30 years in the military, and he had learned to listen for what wasn't being said. The alien spoke of peace and unity, but peace could mean many things. Sometimes it meant the peace of the grave. He leaned over to his aide and whispered, "Start a discreet investigation into the Confederation's member species. I want to know what happened to their individual cultures." As the session continued, Dr. Kim Soo-jin from Seoul National University sat in the observer's gallery, her laptop open on her knees. While everyone else listened to the alien's promises, she quietly began downloading every piece of historical data the Confederation had freely provided. They had given humanity access to their archives as a gesture of good faith, but Soo-jin wondered if they expected anyone to actually read them. Something about their perfect society troubled her deeply. As a historian, she had studied enough civilizations to know that true diversity was messy, chaotic, and often conflict-ridden. The Confederation's harmony seemed too perfect, too clean. It reminded her of the sanitized versions of history that Authoritarian governments like to present. The alien concluded its presentation with a gentle smile. We do not demand an immediate answer, it said. Take time to consider our offer. But know that the galaxy is vast and often dangerous. There are threats in the darkness between stars that no single world can face alone. We offer protection, prosperity, and purpose. As the session ended with thunderous applause, the world leaders began making plans for integration. Media outlets across the globe hailed the dawn of a new age. Humanity would finally take its place among the stars. But in the crowd of celebration, few quiet voices began to ask uncomfortable questions. General Park Min-ho made his mental notes about investigating further. Dr. Kim Soo-jin continued downloading data files. And somewhere in the back of their minds, both wondered if humanity was about to make the biggest mistake in its history. The alien ships waited patiently in space, their crystal hulls gleaming in the light of Earth's sun. They had time. They had made this offer to 47 other species before, and they knew how it would end. Dr. Kim Soo-jin rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the clock on her computer screen. 3 in the morning. She had been reading alien historical records. For 18 hours straight, surviving on nothing but coffee and determination. The empty coffee cups on her desk had multiplied like a small army, and her back ached from hunching over her laptop. But she couldn't stop reading. What she had discovered made her stomach twist with fear. The Confederation had been very generous with their historical data. They had given humanity access to thousands of years of records, claiming it showed their commitment to transparency. Most people saw this as proof of their good intentions. Kim saw it as evidence of something much darker. Every species that joined, the Confederation followed the exact same pattern. First came the Golden Age, new technology, longer lives, the end of poverty and disease. The records showed celebration after celebration as each species embraced their new life among the stars. Then came the slow changes. Traditional festivals were replaced with Confederation holidays. Local languages were gradually abandoned for the Universal Confederation tongue. Ancient customs were labeled as inefficient and quietly discouraged. Within 50 years, the unique cultures that had taken millennia to develop were reduced to museum displays and tourist attractions. The living, breathing traditions that made each species special were gone forever. Kim picked up her phone and called her colleague, Professor Yu Taeyeon from Yonsei University. He answered on the first ring, his voice thick with sleep. Soo-jin, do you know what time it is? The Valdorian Empire lasted 8,000 years, she whispered into the phone, afraid that somehow the aliens might be listening. Their art there. Music. Their entire identity gone within 2 generations of joining the Confederation. There was silence on the other end. Then Taeyeon spoke, his voice now fully awake. That's impossible. The Confederation representatives say they preserve all cultures. They showed us the cultural centers on their worlds. They preserve museums. Taiyun, not living cultures. They keep the artifacts, but kill the spirit. Look at the data yourself. Kim could hear him moving around, probably reaching for his own computer. Send me the files, he said quietly. Across the city, General Park Min-ho was conducting his own investigation in his secure office at the Defense Ministry. Military intelligence had been analyzing the Confederation's ship designs and fleet movements for weeks. What they found was deeply troubling. The Confederation's massive fleet wasn't built for exploration or scientific research. The ships were designed for control. Their weapon systems were perfectly suited for suppressing planetary rebellions, not fighting space battles. Their troop transports could deploy occupation forces to any world in the galaxy. Most disturbing, of all their security protocols were entirely focused on preventing internal uprising. There was no evidence that they had ever faced a serious external threat. The Confederation's military existed to keep their member species in line, not to protect them from outside enemies. Park called his most trusted aide into his office. I want you to quietly contact military leaders in other countries, he said. Don't use official channels. Find out if they've noticed the same things we have. The next morning, Dr. Kim requested an audience with Korean President Lee Jae-woo. She prepared a detailed presentation showing the historical patterns she had discovered. She practiced her speech, hoping to convince the president that humanity needed to be very careful about joining the Confederation. The meeting lasted exactly 10 minutes. The president's aide listened politely to her concerns, then dismissed her with a patronizing smile. "Dr. Kim, we understand your concerns about preserving Korean culture, but think of the benefits. No more disease, no more aging, unlimited energy. Surely these benefits outweigh your worries about cultural change." Kim tried to explain that it wasn't about cultural change, but about cultural extinction. The aide wasn't interested in hearing the distinction. Frustrated, she decided to publish her findings in academic journals. Surely the international scholarly community would listen to evidence-based research. But journal after journal rejected her work. The reviews were harsh and dismissive. "Xenophobic speculation," wrote one reviewer. "The author displays a troubling bias against our potential alien allies." "Unsubstantiated fear-mongering," wrote another. "This paper contributes nothing to serious academic discourse." The world was too enchanted by alien promises to listen to warnings about alien history. Every news channel showed happy interviews with Confederation representatives. Every government was rushing to prepare for integration. Nobody wanted to hear that paradise might come with a terrible price. But Kim wasn't alone. Messages began arriving in her email from historians around the world. Dr. Rachel Morrison from Oxford had noticed the same patterns in the alien records. Professor Hans Weber from Berlin had reached similar conclusions. Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Tokyo had been trying to warn his own government with the same lack of success. One by one, historians from every continent contacted her. They had all seen the same thing. They'd all tried to warn their governments. It'd all been ignored. The historians decided to meet in secret. If the governments wouldn't listen, they would have to find another way to preserve humanity's independence. They began planning a gathering that would change the course of human history. Kim looked at her computer screen one more time. At the records of 47 extinct civilizations. Each one had thought they were joining a benevolent alliance. Each one had been wrong. She wouldn't let humanity become number 40-8, 6 months after the alien ships first appeared. General Park Min-ho sat in his office reviewing reports that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. What had started as a small group of worried military officers and historians had grown into something much larger and more dangerous. The resistance network now stretched across every continent. Scientists who had studied the alien technology and found it suspicious. Teachers who worried about their students losing their cultural identity. Artists who feared their traditional crafts would be forgotten. Even ordinary citizens who simply felt something was wrong with the aliens. Perfect promises. They called themselves the Archive, and not because they stored information in computers and files, but because they preserved something much more important. They preserved humanity's essence, while the rest of the world rushed headlong toward alien integration. Dr. Kim Soo-jin had become one of the Archive's most important members, working with linguist Professor Choi Hun-woo from Seoul National University. She had developed something extraordinary, a communication system that hid messages inside cultural expressions. Korean poetry that seemed to celebrate ancient traditions actually contained military intelligence about alien ship movements. Japanese haiku that appeared to describe cherry blossoms carried scientific data about alien technology weaknesses. African folk songs that sounded like celebrations transmitted resistance coordinates to cells around the world. The system worked because it relied on something the aliens couldn't understand. Human culture was messy, complicated, and full of hidden meanings. What looked like simple art to alien observers was actually a sophisticated communication network. The Confederation monitors our digital communications, explained Hackerly Minsu during a secret meeting in a small Seoul tea house. The young computer expert had discovered that alien technology could intercept any electronic message sent between humans. But they don't understand our cultural context. To them, a traditional Korean wedding song is just noise. The tea house was perfect for their meetings. Old Korean women came there to gossip and play traditional games. Young people met there to study and chat. To any outside observer, It looked like a normal gathering place. The aliens monitoring Earth's population would see nothing suspicious. Minsu pulled out a small device that looked like a traditional Korean fan. We encode our messages in the rhythm patterns of folk songs. The aliens hear music. We hear battle plans. Meanwhile, weapons engineer Captain Ojina had been studying Confederation technology for weaknesses. Her military background gave her insights that civilian scientists missed. Earth's weapons were primitive compared to alien technology, but humans had something no other species in the Confederation possessed. They've been peaceful for millennia, she reported to the archive leadership during another secret meeting. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also inflexible. They've forgotten how to fight asymmetric warfare. Ojina had analyzed every piece of alien military equipment she could access. The Confederation's weapons were designed for overwhelming force against conventional armies. Their ships could destroy entire cities with ease. But they had no defense against guerrilla tactics, no experience with enemies who refused to fight fair. Every other species they absorbed was already unified when they made contact, she explained. They had central governments, organized militaries, predictable strategies. But humans are different. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know how to be unpredictable. The archive faced a terrible dilemma. Earth's governments were only days away from signing the Confederation Charter. World leaders had spent months negotiating the terms of integration, and public opinion overwhelmingly supported joining the aliens. The promised benefits were too attractive to refuse. Unlimited clean energy would solve climate change overnight. Medical technology would eliminate aging and disease. Access to interstellar trade would bring prosperity beyond imagination. Most humans saw the Charter as humanity's graduation too, a higher form of existence. But the archive knew the truth. They had studied the historical records, understood that signing the Charter would begin humanity's slow extinction as a unique species. General Depart called an emergency meeting of the archive leadership. Representatives from every continent gathered in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath Seoul. The location was chosen because alien sensors couldn't penetrate the deep underground spaces. We have a choice, Park told the assembled group. We can try to prevent the signing and probably fail, or we can prepare for the long game. The debate was intense. Some members wanted to go public with their evidence, even if it meant being labeled as traitors. Others argued for sabotage, suggesting they could disable the alien ships before the Charter was signed. But Park had a different idea, one that required incredible patience and faith in humanity's future. We let them sign, he said quietly. We allow the integration to proceed. But we preserve what makes us human, keep our warrior spirit alive in secret. We prepare for the day when the galaxy needs us most. It was the hardest decision of his life. Allowing humanity to voluntarily enter what he believed was a trap went against every instinct he had as a soldier. But as a strategist, he understood that sometimes the best way to win a war was to let the enemy think they had already won. The archive voted. The decision was unanimous, though many members had tears in their eyes as they agreed. They would go underground. They would preserve humanity's fighting spirit. They would wait for their moment to strike back. The Charter would be signed. But the war for humanity's soul was just beginning. 2 years after Earth joined the Confederation, the world had transformed beyond recognition. Seoul's skyline now stretched into the clouds with buildings that seemed to grow like living crystals. The Han River flowed past structures that defied gravity, floating gardens that cleaned the air, transport tubes that carried people at impossible speeds. Dr. Kim Soo-jin walked through the gleaming streets of her transformed city. But she felt no joy at the miraculous changes. The buildings were beautiful, but they all looked the same as structures on every other Confederation world. The people lived longer and healthier lives, but their faces had lost something essential. The spark of individuality was slowly fading. As a cultural liaison, Kim had been assigned to work on Nexus Prime, the Confederation's capital world. It was considered a great honor. Few humans had been trusted with such important positions so early in their integration. But Kim knew the real reason for her assignment. The archive had spent 2 years carefully placing their members in key positions throughout the active Confederation Nexus Prime was a world of impossible beauty. Cities floated among the clouds, connected by bridges of pure light. The inhabitants moved, with perfect grace, their faces serene and untroubled. It was paradise made real, exactly as the aliens had promised. But something was wrong. Kim noticed it in the way people spoke. Every conversation was polite, pleasant, and completely predictable. Nobody argued. Nobody disagreed. Nobody seemed to have any strong opinions about anything. The Confederation's leaders had given her access to their cultural archives, trusting her to help preserve human traditions within their perfect society. They didn't realize that Kim was actually looking for something else entirely. Late one night, while working alone in the restricted archives, Kim found files that weren't supposed to exist. Deep in the oldest sections of the database, hidden behind layers of security, she discovered records that revealed the Confederation's darkest secret. They were dying, not from disease or war, but from something much worse: stagnation. They're perfect. Society had achieved such complete harmony that creativity had withered away like a plant without sunlight. Innovation had stopped. Art had become repetitive. Science had reached a dead end. Kim read through thousands of years of records. Watching as the Confederation's growth slowed and eventually stopped, they hadn't developed any new technology in 3,000 years. They merely refined existing designs, making them prettier but not better. The greatest civilization in the galaxy was slowly suffocating in its own perfection. Kim encrypted her discovery in a traditional Korean folk dance performance and transmitted it to Earth. To anyone monitoring the transmission, it would look like a homesick human sharing her culture with friends back home. But the archive would understand the hidden message. They need us, the dance said in its secret language. They need our chaos, our unpredictability, our ability to adapt and fight. On another part of Nexus Prime, Captain Ojina had been studying Confederation military doctrine. Her official position was as a tactical advisor, helping the aliens understand human warfare for their historical records. But like Kim, she was actually gathering intelligence for the archive. The Confederation's military forces were vast beyond imagination. Millions of ships, countless soldiers, weapons that could destroy entire worlds. But as Ojina studied their strategies and tactics, she realized something disturbing. They were completely predictable. Every battle plan followed the same pattern. Every response to a threat was carefully calculated and methodical. The Confederation had forgotten how to improvise, how to adapt, how to think outside their perfect systems. They'd been peaceful for so long that they've forgotten how to really fight, Ojina reported to her archive contacts. Their technology is incredible, but they use it like a machine following a program. Then she made a discovery that changed everything, while hacking into the Confederation's deep space monitoring systems. Ojina found evidence of something the public wasn't supposed to know. The Confederation wasn't alone in the galaxy. Beyond their borders, in the dark spaces between star systems, something else was moving. The Confederation called them the Devourers. The files were filled with terror and desperation. These entities consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space behind. They had been approaching Confederation territory for centuries, growing stronger with each system they consumed. The Confederation's expansion wasn't driven by benevolence or a desire to spread peace. It was driven by desperate fear. They needed new worlds, new resources, and most importantly, new ways of thinking to defend against an enemy they couldn't understand. Earth hadn't been chosen for its resources or strategic location. It had been chosen because humans were the first species the Confederation had encountered that might actually be able to help them survive. The aliens had studied human history and seen something that terrified and fascinated them. A species that had survived by constantly fighting, adapting, and overcoming impossible odds. A species that thrived on chaos and unpredictability. The Confederation needed humanity's warrior spirit to save them from an enemy that couldn't be defeated by perfect harmony and advanced technology. Oh, Gina transmitted this information to the archive using a code hidden in a traditional Korean military song. The message was clear. The Confederation was using humanity as a weapon against something even worse than assimilation. The archive faced a terrible new question. Should humanity save its captors from the Devourers, or should they let the galaxy burn and hope that something better would rise from the ashes? The choice would determine the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. The crisis came without warning. Alarms screamed across Nexus Prime as emergency broadcasts flooded every communication channel. The Devourers had broken through the Confederation's outer defenses like a knife through paper. 3 entire star systems had been consumed in just 5 days, leaving nothing but empty space where billions of lives had existed. Dr. Kim Soo-jin watched the emergency broadcasts from her apartment on Nexus Prime. The images were horrifying. Massive dark shapes moving through space, swallowing planets whole. The Confederation's perfect formations crumbled before an enemy that fought with primal hunger rather than civilized tactics. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Confederation faced an enemy they couldn't understand or predict. Their advanced technology was useless against creatures that seemed to exist outside the normal laws of physics. Their careful battle plans fell apart when faced with opponents who had no strategy, except endless consumption. Within hours, the Confederation Council called an emergency session. Kim watched as Ambassador Kethera stood before the assembled representatives, the aliens' usual calm composure cracking under the weight of desperation. Your species has experience with irregular warfare, Kethera admitted to the human delegation, the words seeming to stick in the alien's throat. We request your assistance. General Park Min-ho, now officially a Confederation military advisor, stepped forward. Kim felt her heart race as she watched her old friend prepare to make the move they had planned for 2 years. You want our help? Park said quietly. Then you'll get our terms. The archive revealed itself. For 2 years, they had been preparing for this exact moment. Human military officers throughout the Confederation fleet activated sleeper protocols that had been hidden in their daily routines. Scientists working on supposedly civilian projects unveiled weapons based on human warfare principles that the aliens had never seen before. Cultural ambassadors like Kim dropped their masks to reveal themselves as strategic coordinators. Polite, helpful humans who had been quietly integrating into Confederation society suddenly showed their true nature as members of a resistance network that spanned the galaxy. We are not your subjects, Kim declared as she stood before the Confederation Council. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had spent years studying alien weaknesses. We are your partners, or we are your enemies. Choose. The aliens had no choice. The Devourers were days away from reaching their core worlds. Without human help, the greatest civilization in the galaxy would be consumed like all the others. The battle against the Devourers became humanity's proving ground. Human tactics that had seemed primitive to the aliens proved devastatingly effective. Against an enemy that the Confederation couldn't understand, Lieutenant Commander Nam Ji-woo led the first successful counterattack. Instead of meeting the Devourers head-on with superior firepower, she used Earth's ancient military philosophy of winning through apparent defeat. Her small fleet appeared to retreat in panic, leading the Devourers into a carefully prepared trap. The aliens watched in amazement as human forces used misdirection, guerrilla warfare, and controlled chaos to confuse and divide their enemies. Where Confederation forces had failed with their perfect formations, human irregulars succeeded with tactics that seemed to make no sense. They're not following any logical pattern, one Confederation admiral complained during a strategy meeting. Exactly, replied Captain Ojina with a grim smile. Logic is what the Devourers expect. Chaos is what they can't handle. The turning point came when Nam Ji-woo's forces used a strategy that horrified the aliens. Instead of protecting civilian ships, the humans used them as bait, appearing to sacrifice innocent lives to lure the Devourers into a massive ambush. The aliens only realized afterward that the civilian ships had been empty decoys, while the real civilians had been evacuated hours earlier. The devourers, expecting easy prey, found themselves surrounded by human forces that attacked from every direction at once. The creatures that had consumed 3 star systems were torn apart by tactics he couldn't comprehend, but victory came with conditions. As the last Devourer's ship was destroyed, General Park stood before the Confederation Council with demands that would reshape the galaxy. The Confederation Charter was rewritten. Member species would retain their governments, their cultures, and their independence. The Confederation would become what it had always claimed to be, an alliance of equals, not an empire of subjects. "You wanted to absorb us into your perfect society?" Park said to the assembled aliens. "Instead, you're going to learn to celebrate diversity. Real diversity. Not museum pieces, but living, breathing cultures that can grow and change." The changes came swiftly. Earth's governments were restored. Other member species began reclaiming their independence. The Confederation's perfect uniformity gave way to a messier but more vibrant alliance. As the victory celebrations echoed across Nexus Prime, General Park stood with Dr. Kim on an observation deck overlooking the diverse fleet that had saved the galaxy. Ships of dozens of different designs filled the space around the capital world, each one reflecting the unique culture of its builders. "We could have let them fall," Kim said quietly, watching the alien and human crews working together. "We could have let the Devourers consume them and started over." "That's not who we are," Park replied. "We've seen empires fall because they forgot that strength comes from unity, not uniformity." The Confederation had opened their arms to humanity, expecting to embrace another conquered species. Instead, they found themselves reformed by the very people they had sought to control. Earth had indeed seen empires fall, and had chosen to help this one evolve instead.